The Celtics blow out the Los Angeles Clippers 146-115. I'm here in LA where Jaylen Brown just dropped 50 points. We'll talk more about his MVP candidacy, everything that went wrong for Jaylen when he feels as snubbed as he's ever felt, and everything else that went into this win, all of that in just a moment.
Jaylen Brown with the flush. Tatum the drive. Tatum the finish. It is Banner 18. The mission commanding is mission accomplished.
The Celtics are a very good basketball team. I've been saying it all year, but I think it's time to say that they're among the league's elite teams. They enter tonight with the third best net rating in the NBA, and they walk away with a 31-point win against the team that was the hottest in the league, the Los Angeles Clippers. They'd won 6 in a row, but tonight it certainly did not look like it because this Celtics team walked in and dominated on both ends of the floor. And the big story of the day is Jaylen Brown, who scored 50 points. He played one of the best basketball games that I've ever seen him play. And honestly, I wasn't on this entire road trip. You guys know I've been podcasting from home, but I was here at Intuit Dome, and I'm so grateful. It was such an honor to be in the building for this game because this was one of the greatest displays of shot making that I've ever seen in person. You know, in my 3 years covering the NBA, this was one of the best games I've ever covered. And you just saw a guy get hot to an extent that doesn't really make sense to us. It doesn't really make sense to his teammates who are watching in awe. And the end result was that when he checked out of this game in LA, he got a standing ovation, MVP chance. And you kind of knew, whether you were a Clippers fan or a Celtics fan or Clippers media or Celtics media, that you were in the building for a historic game. And he ties his career high, 50 points on 18 of 26 shooting, 6 of 10 from 3, 5 assists, just 2 turnovers. And he was a plus 21 in his 35 minutes. And that was the difference in this game. And so I'm going to spend a lot of this podcast talking about Jaylen Brown, which I've been doing all year, but this game really warrants it. I also do want to talk about a couple other guys that had kind of underrated, impactful performances en route to the victory. Derrick White, who is kind of quickly playing at an all-star level here. Jordan Walsh, who was benched for the first time in 20 games and then goes on to have one of the best games he's had in weeks, 13 points, 13 rebounds. And some guys that are flying under the radar that earlier this season were points of frustration for Celtics fans. Anfernee Simons, Luka Garza, those guys have become assets now. So it's been fun to watch it all come together, but the result is that the Celtics team is now a half game behind the Knicks for the second seed. They're not far off from where they were last year at this time. They've won 12 of their last 15 games. Like, this is one of the best teams in the NBA right now. And I thought they were going to be good. A lot of people thought they were going to be bad. There was a kind of a range of possibilities for how this year was going to go. A lot of it was going to hinge on health and availability, and they've been really lucky, knock on wood, on that front so far. But this has to be the outcome that was the best case scenario for most people. 22-12 is where this team lands. This morning at shoot around in Santa Monica, I spoke to Peyton Pritchard, and I asked him specifically about expectations, right? And he said over the summer, I caught up with him over the summer in August, and he said, this is not a gap year. We're going to prove to people we are still that team. And here we are now in January, right? It's been 5 months since we spoke, and absolutely they've proven that. And he said, we're not satisfied, right? We're not looking at it like we're the third seed and that's a good place to be. They want to win a title, right? They want to be back in that conversation. And I think you saw that tonight. You saw that from their number one leader, from Jaylen Brown, who was frustrated. He was frustrated that he was not Eastern Conference Player of the Month. He quote tweeted the announcement saying SMH. He talked about it on his stream that he felt like he had the best month of any player in the NBA. He scored 30 points every single game. He was averaging 30.1 points per game, the best numbers of his career, the best numbers ever by a Celtics player in December. And he felt like they should have had it. He didn't get it. And what did he do? He went out and responded the way that he always does when he gets snubbed or when he is frustrated, right? He comes out with a chip on his shoulder and he plays the way that he knows how to play. And Joe Mazzulla said pregame, I want him to take it out on our opponents this month, that he didn't get the award that he was going for. And the Clippers were the first victim so far. So I wasn't going to have this conversation in January, and I don't know if that I ever expected to have it, honestly. And I'm a big believer in Jaylen Brown's ceiling and potential and all of that. But I wasn't going to have this conversation because MVP is a conversation reserved for 2 players in the NBA, or 2 or 3 players usually, right? And this year it felt like it was going to be once again a 2-man race between Nikola Jokic and SGA. And now Jokic is out for a month. He might not even reach the 65-game minimum. So he might just be removed from that conversation. And you look at the injuries around the league. So a lot of great players, Giannis, Luka, like they might not even get the 65 game minimum. And then you look at, okay, well, who are the great players that are on track to get that requirement? And Jaylen Brown has to be near the top of that list. I mean, this is a player, he's averaging 30 points per game on the season. He's having a career year from everywhere, right? He's super efficient. And normally, when your usage rate goes up, efficiency goes down. I mean, it's a well-known thing in the NBA when you look at guys making the leap from like a number 3 option to number 1 option, is that with that, your efficiency is going to go down. His efficiency is going up, right? His assist numbers are up. His rebounding numbers are up. Tonight, he texted Joe Mazzulla on the flight from Sacramento to LA, I want to guard Kawhi Leonard. And he comes to this game here and into it and guards the guy that's been going off night in and night out. And Kawhi only scores 22 points in this game, and the Clippers lose by 31. So I'm not going to sit here and say Jaylen Brown is the league's MVP. It's January and there's a lot of factors that go into play, and it's still really early, and SGA is having a historic season and the Thunder are having a historic season, and he's very much still the front runner. But when we're talking about the MVP conversation, Jaylen is squarely in that conversation. He should be on track to, earn first team All-NBA honors, which he's never done before in his career, which Celtics fans have been blessed to have Jason Tatum be in those conversations every year, right, for the last couple of years here. So he's on track to do that. I think he entered the year with a lot of doubters. A lot of people think that he didn't deserve the Supermax contract. A lot of people thought that without Jason Tatum's gravity and all the stars around him, that he was going to fall flat on his face. And I saw a lot of stuff like Jaylen Brown, number 1 hoops, like it's not going to be good. It's going to be ugly basketball. And a lot of the big accounts, the big media personalities, the loudest doubters of his game have pretty much come out and issued apologies for what they had projected. And so for those of you that believed in Jaylen's capabilities, this game must have been so fun to watch, right? But I think just for a normal basketball fan, watching a guy catch that level of fire, like he had 19 points in the third quarter on 7 of 8 shooting. He was lights out. I mean, I was watching the Celtics bench. They didn't even know what to do with themselves. Like everybody was just in awe. Jordan Walsh said after the game, I was just in awe. Derrick White couldn't find the words for it, right? Joe Mazzulla said it was an honor to coach that game, that you don't often have games like that during the regular season that feel like playoff basketball, but this game did. And for the Clippers' credit, like they hung in there for a long time because of their own shot making, right? John Collins caught fire. So to me, watching this game, it solidified that the conversations around Jaylen Brown being a legitimate MVP candidate are legit. Like it's not a crazy conversation to have. It doesn't mean that I think he's a front runner. It doesn't mean I think he's going to win the award. It's extremely hard to win this award. Obviously, right? It's extremely hard to be one of the finalists for this award, but Jaylen has done something that I think few projected. And in this game, I was at warm-ups. I was watching him warm up, and he couldn't miss. And I was thinking to myself, I think it's going to be that kind of night for him and I tweeted this out, so I have evidence. I tweeted out the clip of him shooting. And then after the game, when he was asked, when did you know you had it? He said, I felt it in warm-up. So I could, I watched a lot of warm-ups for these guys. Sometimes they come out and they, honestly throw up a lot of bricks. A lot of these stars, like, don't shoot the way you would expect in warm-ups. And Jaylen's one of those guys. Sometimes he doesn't shoot great in warm-ups. Sometimes he shoots great. And tonight he had it. He did a salsa class yesterday on his Twitch stream. I actually asked him about this after the game, but the shoes that he was wearing today was his first time ever wearing them in a game, but he did wear them during salsa yesterday. So that certainly worked out for him, but just a special kind of all-time performance. He ties his career high, gets another 50 ball. He probably could have, he could have passed his career high, but Joe pulls him out of the game, puts Ugo in, and he gets that standing ovation. He gets the MVP chance. And you could just feel the arena. I heard from some Clippers reporters, this was the loudest this arena has gotten all year. And it was for an opposing player, right? Opposing team's player. So pretty wild to watch. I could talk about Jaylen's performance for 30 minutes. I won't do that, but I will just say, I think we're watching something incredibly special, and that I hope fans are not taking for granted the fact that this year could have been really, really tough to watch, right? Even if the final outcome would have been what people wanted, which was a top draft pick and potentially a franchise player, like the night in and night out was going to be brutal. And instead we're witnessing some like beautiful, beautiful basketball and some all-time individual performances as well as team performances. So thank you, Jaylen, for giving us that. And with that, I'll also mention Derrick White, who kind of flew under the radar in this game, because I actually looked up early on, like, what's Derrick White's career high? His is 41 points. He has 23 in the first half and finishes this game with 29 points and 10 of 20 shooting, 5 of 12 from 3, 7 assists, some great defense. And he has really hit his stride after starting the year ice cold, as we all know. I think he was very much on track to actually pass his career high, and then Jaylen Brown couldn't miss. And so the story on the offense and the momentum quickly flowed from Derrick's hands to Jaylen's. And I think Derrick was being guarded by John Collins at times in this game and just saw that he had a mismatch and took advantage of it. Whereas Peyton Pritchard was kind of taken out of this game for most of the night. He finishes with a decent stat line because he played a little bit, in those final minutes. But Chris Dunn was guarding him and did a good job. And they lived with Derrick White and Jaylen Brown lighting them up. Not exactly sure why, but that was what happened in this game. So Derrick's performance became kind of a footnote because of Jaylen Brown's ridiculous stat line. And so when we spoke to him post game, you can check out his full press conference. Most of the questions that he got were about Jaylen. Only afterwards I realized, I was like, Derrick had a really good game himself too. But I think we talked about this a lot at the beginning of the year. For the Celtics to get where they want to go, he has to play at an all-star level. It doesn't mean he's going to be named an all-star. There are always guys that play at an all-star level that aren't, and there's fan voting, and there's popularity contests, and there's also the reality that, there are limited spots, and there are a lot of guys putting up career years in the Eastern Conference. So I don't know if Derrick is going to get there, but the last couple of times I've broached this topic of all-stars, I've said, it's pretty much not something that is real, but the Celtics are campaigning Derrick and Peyton, but they don't really have viable candidacies. I'm going to retract that. I do think Derrick White has a viable pathway to being named an all-star in the Eastern Conference, because if the Celtics are the number 2 seed in a couple of weeks when it's, voting closes, the all-star game is about a month away, a month and a half away. If they're the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, you want to look across the roster and say, hey, is there a deserving second player to be named all-star? Jaylen Brown's obviously going to be named all-star, but do they need a second player? You don't always get one. Like Thunder only had one all-star last year, right? Or is that true? Actually, not 100% sure about that. But historically, the Celtics have had 2, right? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And you look across the top seeds here, and a lot of times you work backwards, right? When coaches make their selections. Derrick is a guy whose numbers maybe don't pop up as much as other guys, but defensively, I think he's one of the best defenders in the NBA. Especially this year, you're able to see the help side defense, the transition defense. What he's doing is like a secondary shot blocker, which Joe Mazzulla talked about pregame, that like he had that 7-block game against the Jazz. A lot of that is him roaming, doing a lot of what Drew Holiday kind of used to do, and really he's been thriving in this defensive system. So we're talking about like who are the actual really good basketball players in this league. Derrick is playing at an all-star level. So I'm ready to start the campaign. I don't know that it's going to happen because at the end of the day, a lot of things have to go right, and him not shooting his best for a lot of the season doesn't really help. But I think that he has a real case to be made. I think the Celtics should be upping the pressure. And maybe this is the year he finally gets it. I thought 2 years ago, that was when like the White's an all-star chance for starting. Drew Holiday was getting in on it. And I thought like, maybe this is the year that Celtics get 3. But now they're pretty similar to where they were last year record-wise. And obviously they're down a lot of players. And so you can give the accolades to Joe. You can say he's coach of the month, coach of the year. You can give the accolades to Jaylen, but maybe there's a second guy that needs to get rewarded. And so I think that White is playing at that all-star caliber level, and it's been really, really fun to watch. And this first half is, he was a big reason why they were able to kind of get that early lead and maybe open some things up for Jaylen as well. I mean, both those two guys were putting up creed. You could feel from the beginning that they both had it. And Derrick is not the main story tonight, but should not be overlooked for his contributions in this game. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new could be hard, but in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoop action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. Missing your fantasy team? My league is already over, but with Prize Picks, I don't have to wait until next year's draft to keep playing fantasy. Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week, even in the playoffs. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week. No draft requires. Prize Picks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast and secure. Prize Picks accepts most major payment methods, making deposits into your account quick and easy this sports season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So I mentioned Jaylen Brown and how I do think that he should squarely be in the MVP conversation. I mentioned Derrick White, who had a quiet 29 points in this game and is quickly establishing himself as a potential really viable, legitimate all-star candidate. Not to make this all about individual awards, but it is kind of wild to see like how much things have changed over the last few months. It was October when we were talking about this team 0-3 tanking and maybe they're not ready for this. And now here we are with like very legitimate cases to be made for all sorts of individual accolades. But the story of the Celtics team is not about the MVP. It's not about the all-stars. It's not about the top. I actually think the story of this team has been about everybody else, and how they've managed to plug in the absences of guys like Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and Luke Kornet and Al Horford, and put in guys that had very little NBA experience. And Jordan Walsh is near the top of that list, right? Jordan's been in one of my favorite stories of the year. I thoroughly enjoyed covering him. A lot of people know his first season was my first season covering this team, and I went up to the G League a ton. He was one of the guys I interviewed the most, I would say, probably to date, because I went up there so often his first year and spoke to him. And he gets the NP to start the year, and then he has this like breakthrough moment, right? Not to recap like the Jordan Walsh experience, but 20 straight games he starts. But over the last few weeks, his minutes were on the decline, and it felt inevitable that he was going to eventually get pulled from the starting lineup. He only played 5 minutes in Sacramento, so he only plays the first 5 minutes, doesn't play the rest of the night. And you can feel that things were starting to go south with him. And we've seen this movie before because Josh Minot started for like 2 weeks straight. He got pulled from the starting lineup. For a while, he was playing bench minutes, and then now he got 3 straight DNPs tonight. Only played the last couple minutes of the game. So there is a blueprint for things going swimmingly on this team as the 5th starter, and then they are no longer going swimmingly. And I don't really have like a hot take on who should play and whether Joe is right or not. I'll just defer to Joe because he seems to be pushing all the right buttons. And the most important thing is that this team just keeps winning, right? So when I look at Jordan and I look at Jordan's trajectory here, I was hoping that things would turn around for him because I think he's a really good basketball player. And I think that he, at his best, can do great things for this team. But listen, if Jordan gets pulled and Joe decides to go with Ugo or Baylor or Sam, I trust Joe because he's proven so far this season that his instincts are pretty good about substitution patterns and rotations and how to motivate guys and how to energize them. That being said, when Jordan wasn't starting today, I thought to myself, like, is Jordan even going to play? Because the first couple subs to come in are Anfernee, Luka, and Ugo, and they come into the game. And I was thinking, like, is he going to just get a DNP? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And he comes in for the final minutes of that first quarter, and he was awesome from the jump. His defense was awesome. He had that extra pep in his step. He looked like Jordan of like a month ago, where you could just tell he had it right away. Finishes this game with 13 points, 13 rebounds, 6 were on the offensive end. His instincts were there. His motor was there, and he provided them the jolt that they relied on him for a couple of weeks there, that I thought maybe he had lost some of his mojo, and was a plus 24 in his 30 minutes. 30 minutes is also the most that he's played in weeks, because even though he was starting the last few weeks, his minutes were on a steep decline, and there were a lot of second halves that he wasn't starting. So, he was technically starting, but he was kind of playing more of a bench role. But in this game, he comes off the bench and plays the most minutes he has in a long time. And after the game, I talked to Jordan, and he said, we asked him, he did a media availability. I asked him, like, does it fuel you to see the minutes decline? Because some guys maybe take offense to it. Some guys are upset. Some guys feel like, oh, like Joe hates me now or whatever. You could process it in a million different ways. But Jordan said, it fueled me, and I wanted to go out there and I wanted to kind of like re-earn that. So you saw that. If you did not know the backstory here, you watched a guy play hungry tonight. And you maybe aren't surprised to learn that an opportunity that he had a week ago, he didn't have tonight, right? He wants to start. Everybody wants to start. Everybody wants to hear their name called. Everybody wants to be the guy that locks down those opponents. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if he's going to start next game or if Joe likes the Sam spot start. If I had to guess, I think Jordan's going to re-establish himself as their reliable 5th starter. But Joe has a willingness, he's shown that he is not committed to any one guy, and that if he feels like you don't have it, he will pull the plug on you and turn to the next guy on the bench. And I think that's been quietly a strength of this team. So shout out to Jordan for responding well. He's 21 years old. He doesn't have a lot of experience having it, having the starting spot, having it all, having his name be like the hottest name in town. So I like the fact that he was able to deal with the things not going his way and come back tonight and play really well and take on the defensive assignments and also do things on the offensive end. 3 or 4 from 3 night, hit some big ones. I'm also going to give a shout out to Anfernee Simons, who a couple days ago, Joe Mazzulla said, this is a guy that's been flying under the radar. And I think it's true. And as a member of the media, I feel like I have an obligation to talk a little bit more about his impact, because this guy led the NBA in plus minus in the month of December. Once again, plus 18 in his 19 minutes, hit some very timely shots, was 5 of 8 from 3. Everybody knows he can score the ball. I think that he's improved on the defensive end, and his level of compete's been good, his level of care, his effort. And at the end of the day, like, is he worth $28 million a year? Did they win the Drew Holiday trade? Like, these are big picture questions that I don't think he needs to answer for, right? Like all he needs to do is do what the Celtics need for him to win. And honestly, over the past like 5, 6 weeks, I felt like he has figured out what his role is on this team. He's come in and he's made the right play. And when they need a basket from him, they get it. When they need a stop, he's giving it his all. He's in the best position he can be. And I'm pretty like ready to say that he's doing what this team needs him to do. So I hope they don't trade him. I hope they keep him here. I hope that he's a part of this team's playoff run because he is impacting winning. And he is, I like, he had some run today with Peyton Pritchard, but a lot of it is, early on, it was like Peyton versus Anfernee, who's going to get the spot. They played together for a stretch tonight that I really liked. Like they have good chemistry. I think they're good friends. Like Peyton was talking to shoot around today about how they talk a lot about like the nets and about different kinds of nets being positive and hard, more rewarding to make shots than not. And I was thinking to myself, like, it's funny because they've become this like storyline of like Anfernee versus Peyton, but I actually really like them as a duo too on the floor. So he's a guy that, again, he's not going to be the main story. He's kind of just doing his job. He's only played, 19 minutes, so he's still playing bench minutes, but he's been good in those minutes. And the Celtics have been better with him on the floor. And I don't think it's a coincidence. And I think he's doing his job. He really is. And that's been the story of this team. Like the story of this team is that everybody does their job, and that's why they're where they're at right now. That's why they are so close to being the second best team in the Eastern Conference record-wise, and why I think they have a real shot to come out of the East this spring. Like I really do. All the indicators are there. They have the third best net rating entering tonight. They might even have the second best net rating after this game. We'll see when the numbers get computed. But Anfernee has been a big part of that, and he was thrust into a tough situation, right? Like everybody knows. He was traded after being the leading scorer for the franchise over the last few years, and here he is now. And he has no complaints. He's competed. He said all the right things, and he deserves his flowers for the way he's adapted to a very different setup and different scheme. The last guy I'm going to mention is Luka Garza, who everybody thought was done, right? What was it, a couple weeks ago, where he was just completely out, DNP, and he keeps working. We see it at shoot around. We see it at practice, getting up shots with X and Chris Boucher. I think he's here to stay. I don't think we're going to see Luka Garza get DNPs anymore. Maybe in the playoffs, but in the regular season, I think he's shown his impact, right? What he gives you as a roller, as an offensive rebounder, the energy that he plays with, I mean, it's relentless. It never wavers. And in this game, he has 11 points, 3 of 5 shooting, perfect from the line, 4-4, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He's developing some nice chemistry with Jaylen, with other guys on the roster. He's finishing. He has that little jump floater that he has, plus 17 in his 20 minutes. They've been outscoring opponents substantially with him on the floor over the past couple weeks. And first I was like, oh, maybe it's just a matchup thing. Like this is just a good matchup for him. But he's doing it on a nightly basis. So I think he's here to stay. I think that this is another Brad Stevens signing, like minimum contract. They have him for 2 years. And he's probably going to be a really helpful piece for the next 2 years. And maybe beyond that, we'll see. But everybody's been doing their job, right? Jaylen really emphasized after the game, like, this doesn't happen. You don't lose a bunch of guys in the NBA and then come out and play the way this team has done. And he credited the coaching staff. Joe Mazzulla won Coach of the Year last month, and it's much more than just Joe. Joe's the face of the coaching staff, but being on the road, being to practice, all that, like you see, there's a whole staff, a bunch of guys that are responsible for their success, and player development staff, the defensive coordinators, all of that. So I do think this has been a full team effort. Luka Garza, Jordan Walsh, these guys epitomize like what the season has been about. So while the Jaylen Brown MVP is the headline, that's what my game story will be about. That's what most of our questions were about. I do kind of have this feeling leaving this arena, which I will be doing soon, like this is a real team, right? And that's why they're in the position they're in. Nobody expected this. I talked to a lot of experts, front office people. Nobody expected this. Maybe Joe Mazzulla and Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard, who all stressed me over the summer this team was going to be good. But the analysts, the critics, the people that get paid to make predictions, that we had this wrong, right? I had them winning 45 games, and I thought I was being positive, but I was even short selling them. So really fun season, right? They're 22-12. They're about to go home. They have a pretty easy schedule as far as opponents over the next couple weeks. We'll see how it actually plays out, because sometimes it's not always reality, right? And a lot of games in a short amount of time. So we'll see if guys get rest nights or that sort of thing. But just a special game here in Inuit. I'm super glad that even though I wasn't on this entire road trip, I'm really glad that I was at this game. Check out the full press conferences. We have them all. We haven't had the last couple games, but Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, Joe Mazzulla, Jordan Walsh, they all spoke after this game. Peyton Pritchard spoke a shoot around. So you can check out what they had to say. Jaylen in particular, go check out his press conference. One of my favorite press conferences that he's done. He was super authentic, super open with us, and obviously was in a pretty good spirits after his career night, and a really special atmosphere here in LA. So As always, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section what stood out to you from this game. Do leave a like, subscribe to CLNS Media, subscribe to the channel. Check out our full 2-hour post-game show. Sherrod, Bobby, and I talked about this game at length. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Super honored and grateful to have this podcast. And especially a night like tonight where I was like, we did the show, talked to the players, but I have more to say. I want to talk more about this game. So I'm grateful to have this platform, and I appreciate all of you for watching. So I hope you enjoyed the game. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll have more coverage coming shortly. Let's play again on Monday. So it's a quick turnaround here.